So, in French, we don't say solidarity, we say solidarité. So I'm going to say Lac-Mégantic, and will you say solidarité? So, Lac-Mégantic. Solidarité. Lac-Mégantic. Solidarité. Lac-Mégantic. Solidarité. Lac-Mégantic. Solidarité. With love.
And just to kind of set up what today is all about, we now know that our region, the Bay Area, has been targeted by big oil to be the destination for the fracked crude from North Dakota, the Bakken fields, as well as tar sands from Alberta, Canada. And so that brings with it a whole set of risks just beyond the normal process of refining. The transportation of crude by rail, especially the Bakken crude, is particularly a threat to all of us. And so we're going to learn more about that today, and we're going to put a face to that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our esteemed panel. We have, in the order of speaking, George Monterrey, who's from Pittsburgh, who's been helping to lead the fight against Wespac. And we also have Antonia Yujas, who's a well-known writer and analyst of the oil industry and gives us a lot of important information. And then the mayor of Richmond, who's been helping to turn this city around and take on big oil, Gayle McLaughlin. And then from the Lac-Mégantic region, we have Marilaine Savard. And then wrapping it up will be our own esteemed Penny Opal Plant, straight out of Richmond High. And of course, many other places. So first, let's go ahead and get started with George Monterrey.
Thank you, Andre. I'm telling you, the fight is just starting. Wespac is a piece of a big puzzle. The struggle of injustice continues. Let me read to you what I said at our march by starting with a quote by Henry Miller. We have two American flags always, one for the rich, one for the poor. When the rich fly it, means that things are under control. When the poor fly it, means danger, revolution, anarchy. Henry Miller. Now, I am not a rich man. I imagine most of you are not as well. But I am a proud husband, grandfather, father, and a military veteran. And I, for one, am tired of accepting the lies of the elite. This project would undoubtedly create wealth, but where will that wealth wind up? In the hands of the already wealthy oil elite? And what will the honest citizens of Pittsburgh receive? At a minimum, there will be much pollution of our air, water, and soil. Worst case, we become an environmental wasteland like every other oil-drenched disaster. Why would we let this come into our beautiful town? Let's stand together and let's fly our American flag. One that still represents truth. One that still believes in honesty. One that believes in equality, and one that values life more than money. Let's stand together beneath this flag so those who fly the other one know we are coming and we won't stop.
I want to start out by thanking you all for coming. And welcome to all those of you who came from outside of Richmond into Richmond. Once again, we welcome you all because our struggle is your struggle. You know, we are all in this together. Richmond has played a leading role in many ways, and it is because of our grassroots movement, but it's also because of our allies from all over. So thank you for that. I also want to start out just by expressing my personal sadness and solidarity with the lost lives of Lac-Mégantic, if I'm saying that correctly. It was such a profound and sad video to watch, and very, very moving, but very powerful in reminding us of what can come to so many of us, to so many cities, so many towns, and sadly already happened in this town of Canada. And we send all our deepest condolences to all the families and all the people of the town. Let me share you a little bit about the history. As Andres said, we are in the home of the Richmond Progressive Alliance. Here we call it the Bobby Bowens Progressive Center. Bobby Bowens was a member of our RPA, Richmond Progressive Alliance steering committee. He was also a former Black Panther Party member. Sadly, he passed on in 2012, but we remained with him in our memories and our hearts, and we have named this center after him. As Andres said, the RPA started 10 years ago, kind of the end of 2003, I believe. So what we've done, first of all, to go back even a little further, there's always been an environmental justice movement in Richmond. There's been, people fighting up against Chevron, fighting for their health, fighting for a reduction of the pollution, fighting for a reduction of incidents at the refinery. In 2003, when those of us came together to form the RPA, things took on a new level. It took on a new level because we were ready to fight, not only join with the forces who had already been fighting, but also because we were entering the electoral arena. So we ran candidates in 2004 for city council, and then we've ran candidates ever since, and we've been up against Chevron's money and their horrendous, awful attacks on those of us who have run, and we've beat them, and we've come close to beating them. We've just kept up the battle, and we will keep up the battle. So let me also tell you that the Chevron Richmond refinery is the second largest oil refinery in the state of California. So this is a big, big oil refinery. 242,000 barrels of oil get refined a day at the Chevron refinery here in Richmond. We also know that the health impacts in our community have been major. We have among the highest rates of asthma, heart disease, cancer, especially around the refinery, which is largely people of color. This is definitely a scenario that we've been fighting against for years and years and years. But we've won, as I said, many, many fights. In addition to many of us winning our council races and I winning my 2 mayoral races, we also had wins such as a $114 million tax settlement with Chevron, and based on grassroots work, based on pressure from the grassroots. We also beat back a major expansion project that Chevron put forward, both based on the grassroots coming to city council meetings saying this is a flawed environmental impact report, but also because of environmental groups going to the courts and having the courts weigh in on the side of this EIR being flawed. So we beat that back. Now we have a new expansion project that the city is reviewing, and we need all your support in making sure every little detail in that is reviewed. And I know CBE is very, very on top of that, and we'll continue to work closely with CBE to make sure that we stand up for what is right when it comes to that. We want modernization, but we want the right kind of modernization, not the tar sands, not the type of explosive materials that could harm our communities. So we have a lot of work to do in Richmond. We've done things at the same time as we push back on Chevron. We make good things happen. We're #1 in the Bay Area for solar installed per capita. We have many. We're really seen as an environmental leader. We have banned styrofoam, we've banned plastic bags. We have showcased the fact that we are becoming a bicycle-friendly city. We have done smart growth. We want the types of developments, the housing, the affordable housing around public transportation. We have stood for open space and renovating our parks and having open shorelines and keeping our wetlands rather than allowing our wetlands to be contaminated by horrible things, developments and or explosions like we saw in that powerful PowerPoint that Antonia showed us just now. So we've done a lot of good things and we keep pushing back against the bad things. Some of the things we're standing for going forward are, first and foremost, safety improvements at the refinery. We know about a year and a half ago now, we had a major fire at the Chevron refinery. That was on August 6, 2012. That sent 15,000 people to local hospitals for treatment. So, this was one among, several incidents over recent years that have caused explosions and fires in the refinery. This one was bigger than others, and this one had a huge plume that spread across Richmond into the surrounding area as far as San Francisco. So the city of Richmond is now suing Chevron for damages for that fire. So that we don't ever have this kind of a explosion, this kind of a fire impact us ever again. We have a great legal team on this, and we think we're going to really make it happen for our residents, a safe refinery. So I want to, so safety first, of course. We want to make sure emissions are reduced at the refinery. Emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, this is the Chevron refinery in Richmond is the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the entire state. So, we got a lot of firsts here, both good and bad, in Richmond. We also know that they talk about jobs, and jobs are important, as was said before. But at the refinery, they only hire around 5% of Richmond residents. So how is that serving our community? These are some of the things we want going forward. We want a safe refinery, we want greenhouse gas emissions reduced, we want all the pollutants that come along with the greenhouse gases because they don't come by themselves. There's all kinds of other pollutants that impact people's lungs and the air we breathe. So we want all pollution reduced. We want a state-of-the-art technology for and we want nothing new being refined there. In fact, we want to make sure that that the kind of crude that is refined there has in no way attached to this heavy, dirtier crude and this fracked crude. We have to do that as we go forward. We have to assure that. That's why connecting the dots is so important, and I'm so grateful to Antonia for this PowerPoint, and I will definitely want to show it or have you come and explain to so many in Richmond about this connection and why we in the Bay Area have to be very concerned about the type of crude that is coming our way, but not if we can help it. So I also want to share that I was in Ecuador it was September. I was invited to go to Ecuador by the Ecuadorian government, which came as a surprise to me, but they saw what we were doing in Richmond, and they have problems with Chevron in Ecuador. And so, in fact, what happened in Ecuador was Texaco, which then merged with Chevron, but for years Texaco operated in the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest and dumped 19 billion gallons of toxic wastewater into the Amazon rainforest and totally devastated that area of the rainforest and harmed people's lives drastically. Indigenous communities lived in the rainforest, had birth defects, cancers, deaths, you know, all kinds of miscarriages. I mean, it was like major. And so the president of Ecuador invited me, as he's invited others who he thinks have a connection with Chevron and Chevron's problems, to see the damage that they did in their, you know, in the rainforest that impacts us all. The rainforest is really the lungs of us all. So I went there, I put my hands into the, what, you know, looked like just some marsh area. You put your hand in it and it comes up totally black with crude oil. I met with the indigenous folks, and we hope to have them come here. They have been in the Bay Area before, who sued Chevron and won a $19 billion settlement, which is a wonderful thing. But of course, Chevron has taken them to court. The indigenous people, they're putting the focus on the victims, calling them gangsters and calling them like mafia, thinking, you know, Chevron is the victim. So they're doing that trial in New York. So from Richmond to, and I always have to look at my notes here for Lac-Mégantic, to Ecuador, to Nigeria, to Pittsburg, to wherever these oil companies are working to harm us. We have to stand together. It's in all of our interest. And so that's why it's so exciting to see you all here. To all of us who are here from Richmond, I mean, we know we have to continue our work. And I just want to end with just a couple thoughts about adding to what Andres originally said. We do have this incredibly important election coming up this year. We have a group of candidates running. This is my last year as mayor. I can't run again as mayor. However, I can run as a city council member, and that's what I'm doing. I'm honored to be running with, and you already heard Andres mention Jomanka Beckles and Eduardo Martinez, and our mayoral candidate, Mike Parker. We have a strong team, we have a great team, but we're going to be up against some heavy-duty money. Yeah. And I want to just share with you, I mean, Chevron started beating us back. Well, last campaign year was, or 2012 campaign year, they put a lot of money into beating the progressive movement back, and you know, we came back stronger than ever, but we know they're coming back stronger than ever as well. This is how much they've spent in just the last couple of years, because they don't even do it just in campaign years. They start spending their money, you know, even in non-campaign years to start trying to influence people. They've spent about $25 million in the past couple of years. $16 million for what they call a community revitalization initiative. You know, they, rather than pay enough taxes, we've gotten some gains from them, but not what they should be paying, considering they make $25 billion in profits a year. So they give a few dollars here and here, and they have this new initiative over, you know, it's going to take place over 15 years. So they threw that kind of money for the revitalization initiative to really buy off, you know, to try and buy off the people of Richmond. But we're not going to let it happen. They also spent $2 million for 2 years of a newsletter. They send it to people's mailboxes and out on the internet. They spent $2 million for billboard space, and that's just for 1 year. If you look around Richmond, you'll see the Chevron emblem on all our billboards, trying to take credit for the good gains that we progressives made here in Richmond. They spent about $2 million for candidate mailers and hit pieces. This goes back about to 2012. $1 million for PR strategy consultants, paid reports, and focus groups. $1 million for 2 years of the Richmond Standard. This is their new online newspaper, Richmond Standard. and $1 million for an organization called For Richmond and its events. So, thank you to Jeff Kilbreth, who's also here, our PA consultant on Chevron Matters, who pulled together these estimated figures. But these figures give you an idea of what we're up against. And they haven't even started to attack Team Richmond, which we know they're going to attack. So we're going to push back. We need all your help. We need to connect the dots. We need to stay together. Richmond is a fight to show that an urban community can fight back and win, to show that an urban community can revitalize ourselves, can show that we aren't going to let our democracy be sold off, and we aren't going to let our health or our safety be put at risk. So we stand with Lac-Mégantic. We stand with all of you. Pittsburg, great to hear all the speakers here. Great to have, I know Penny is going to speak, and I look forward to hearing from Marilaine, and I'm going to finish there, and thank you all for being here today.
Gayle McLaughlin.
My name is Marilaine Savard, and I've been living in the Lac-Mégantic region for the last decade. I'm a massage therapist and a co-founder of a stone carving business. So yeah, I'm here today to share with you the tragedy that hit our town on July 6, 2013. That night, a train loaded with crude back and oil derailed and exploded in our town, killing 47 people. Since mid-November, I have been the spokesperson of a citizen committee that was funded to deal with decontaminating the area and to address other issues that the community of the Lac-Mégantic has had to face in the wake of the disaster. Lac-Mégantic is a little peaceful town. Do we have? Ah, yes. It's southern Quebec, near the main border. So you see here the town before disaster. And the town is surrounded by the wonderful Mégantic Lake and Chaudière River. So you can see the next slides. And it had a particular character with only 6,000 people living in the area, so it's such a little town. Since its founding at the end of the 19th century, the railroad played a major role in the town's economic and industrial development. For a long time, the train only transported logs or passengers. But during the last years, the transport of hazardous material has been increasing exponentially. When MMA, the Montreal, Maine and Atlantic Railway, became the owner of the railroad, tons of crude oil convoys started to come through our town. To give you an idea of how intense the traffic train has become in the last few years, more than 140,000 cars came through in 2013. There were a mere of 500 in 2009, so big increase. The major problem was that the company was well known to have done minimal maintenance and for having received many warnings of non-compliance. At the same time, the federal government became lax in its regulatory oversight and permitted MMA since spring 2010 to drive the trains with only one operator. In addition, they were authorized to park the oil convoy at night without any supervision while the driver was sleeping in a hotel 5 miles away. The night of July 6th, the train was left alone on the main track, when in fact it should have been parked on the shoulder, which is the way to do things according to the safety rules that protect the train in case of brake failures. That night, firemen from the nearby village came over to extinguish a fire that had started in the engine. The fire was controlled and the train was left again without surveillance. Just before 1 o'clock, And we don't know yet all the details related to the failure that activate the handbrake. But the train started to move downward without a conductor, descending a hill of 1.2% grade, which is one of the worst slopes for a train in Canada. So the 72-car train, weighing 10,300 tons, is now entering 5 miles further down into downtown Lac-Mégantic at 60 miles per hour. So fast. The train cannot cope with the curve that is there and derails. There is an immense blast generated by the impact of the cars that are loaded with back and crude oil. It is a beautiful night. The first warm night in the summer. A lot of people are at the music cafe, a little family pub. A band is playing and 2 separate birthday celebrations are going on. During the band intermission, some people are going outside to the terrace to smoke a cigarette. They are the lucky ones. They see the train bearing down on them so fast. They are able to jump off the terrace and run away for their lives. A huge and out-of-control fire is staring through the buildings and trees. Unfortunately, people that are in the music cafe are trapped and burning. People later said it felt like the apocalypse. We've never been through such terrible stress. It took 36 hours to control the blaze. Like Antonia said, because it was oil fire, it was impossible to extinguish it. So, 47 people died. All night the hospital staff waited for people to treat, but they never came. There were no injuries. People either survived or died, vaporized by the fire. Luckily, that night most of the businesses were closed. If they had been open for business, more people could have died. 40 buildings burned down completely. 1.5 million crude oil gallons were spilled. 1.5 million crude oil spilled. From that, 26,000 gallons were discharged in the Chevron River. The Chaudière River? Well, maybe, no, okay, yeah. And you can go to the slide. I just want to tell you that even if you ever say that, this is to the right, the music cafe pub, and there is the train where they were. So it was so close, very close. And then you're going to see the contamination of the river. So you can go to the slide that have the fire. So that kind of explosion that you see, it was the same thing in Lac-Mégantic. We had like 7 or 8 explosions, like you saw on the video of Antonia. You can go. That was the blaze. Impossible to control it. So the contaminated area left behind, and you can go slowly, Martin, left behind is equivalent in size to 50 football fields. MMA, the railroad, is now completely bankrupt, which leaves the citizens of Lac-Mégantic broken down with the $200 million plan for decontaminating the area. Here you can see that the oil was spilled in the lake, and even the lake was burning. So water just cannot extinguish that kind of fire. It was impossible to do anything. And like you said, Antonia, we were not ready. We were not having, that kind of life things that can extinguish chemicals. We don't have it. So many citizens rang the alarm about the possibility that such catastrophe could occur, could occur because of the poor condition of the railway and because of the increasing number of convoys with dangerous loads. Unfortunately, the authorities turned to a deaf ear. Oh yeah, so this is the contamination in the river, and then the other slide we really see the space that burned with all. There were not the 72 cars derailed. I think they could extract it like 8 or 9 cars that won't derail, but the majority fully derailed like this. So this was our downtown. Now, believe it or not, the oil industry is already talking about bringing back crude oil trains in the middle of our town. Because, as you may not know, the first thing that was rebuilt was the train tracks. Okay? The first thing, with the same dangerous curve. So, since mid-December, trains with dry materials are already passing through. People were not glad of that, but they were thinking that maybe, okay, train for our industry, for economic industry, local industry. But now we are worried that crude oil will follow. So, looking back, this is the last one, so you can just go ahead and back if you want. Looking back to the whole thing, it seems to me that the government left too much ground to the industry, leaving the safety of the citizens to an economic priorities. The oil industry is far too powerful. There is to be a better balance between regulators and industries. The first function of the government should be to protect its citizens and not to assist the shareholders. But the majority thinks that the government works for us. The majority thinks that the government applies safety rules that protect us, but it is not the case. In fact, both Canada and United States are producing a huge amount of oil and gas, and as citizens, we are paying a high social and environmental price for this. Canada's conservative political agenda, the regime of austerity, has completely jeopardized our safety. They shrank the budgets for inspecting the railroads and creating emergency plans in case of industrial catastrophe. Obviously, we cannot trust our government, and that is why citizen groups are important. We have to assert our authority. So I'm here today to urge the communities of the San Francisco Bay Area to demand that their health and safety be put ahead of corporate profit. So please, stand up and mobilize. It is a citizen battle. Let's have hope that we can change things. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You are really incredible. You inspire me a lot.
Marilaine Savard, Lac-Mégantic.
Thank you, guys. You are amazing. Thank you.
Penny Opal Plan.
Y'all know her. Give her up.
that some of the Eastern Coast tribes do that I would like us to do right now. And that is to imagine that we're bundling up our love and our condolences to your community. And let's just take a moment to think about that, let's just make this big giant bundle of love and healing for their community, and imagine that we're handing it to you to take home with you. And that wherever you are, wherever the people are in your community, whatever you're going through, that we're all connected now. And that we will be thinking of you as I know that you'll be thinking of us. We're connected. Thank you. So I want to just we're connecting the dots today, so I just want to connect them a little bit further out, starting with the tar sands in Alberta, Canada, and the Indigenous people, the First Nations people there that have been fighting that horrible monster for so long now. So here was this beautiful boreal forest that First Nations people hunted in and fished in, and it took care of them. The forest took care of the people, and the people took care of the forest, as it's meant to be. That's how it's meant to be here on our beautiful mother. And then the fossil fuel corporations moved in, and they have taken a giant spoon and scraped everything off of her belly, thrown it away. And now instead of this beautiful boreal forest that the people took care of, that took care of them, we have this giant scar on the belly of our mother with toxic waste pools that are so big they can be seen from outer space. So the people there, whose lives depended on the forest, when they go hunting and fishing, and they take the animals in a respectful way, the way they've always done, they open them up, and there's cancerous tumors and horrible things inside of them. And the elders are telling them, you can't eat that, we can't eat that. So they're far from anywhere. So they're having a hard time even finding something to eat. And I don't know if any of you have seen online the photographs of the gigantic trucks that are at the tar sands and the fracked-crude fields, but the tires are higher than I can reach. And so when the trucks are driving around on the highways, which they do, these giant trucks, they're running people over and killing them. So in addition to not being able to live the way that the people have always lived, they're also not able to walk on the roads. Who's going to let their child walk on a road when a giant truck can just come and smash them like they're a little bug? So that's the Alberta tar sands. And no disrespect to the octopus, but if you imagine that the tar sands are the head of an octopus, the arms are spreading from the east to the west. And those are the arms of the pipelines, and the arms of the trains, and the arms of the trucks. It's this toxic, I'm very visual, so I have to talk about things in a visual way, but it's this, and again, no disrespect to the octopus, but it's this toxic octopus whose arms are spreading all over. So that's there. And their fight continues. And it's horrible, it's sad. So we're going to move to the Bakken oil fields that has a very similar story. The arms are spreading out in all these different ways, and the people, as in Alberta, are dying of cancer and dying of autoimmune diseases, and their children have all kinds of respiratory problems. And it's what a segment of our relatives have imagined. You know, we're all related, even to our crazy, insane relatives. And some of our crazy, insane relatives have imagined this future for us that in order for us to not buy into, we need to step out of it. step out of that. Like those kind of science fiction movies where everything's gray and everything's dull and people are very conformist, and if you step out of that system, then you're put someplace bad. So who wants that? Do you want that? Chevron wants that. Good answer. But really what we're talking about are these people, these corporatized people who are suffering from a mental illness that we call greed. They're suffering from that. They're mentally ill. They're trying to fill this hole in their heart that's supposed to be filled with the connection of everything that exists on the belly of our beautiful mother with fancy cars and fancy women and money and stuff. So within that mental illness, they don't understand that that hole will never be filled by any of that. It won't. But what it will be filled by is remembering who they are and their place within the system upon which Mother Earth created for all of us to live. Thank you. So, I just want to end with a couple of things, and that is that the corporations, these fossil fuel corporations, they don't care about us. We have to really get that into our minds. They don't care about us. Do you think they care about us?
No.
Are we going to do something about it?
Yes.
Are we going to do everything that we can to save the earth, to save the water, to save the coming generations?
Yes.
That wasn't enthusiastic enough.
Hell yes.
One more time, a little bit better. I know you've got it deep in your belly. Pull it out.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's really an honor, and the Vice Mayor is signing the proclamation. I've already signed it. And we'd like to ask Marilaine to please come up here and join us so we can read and show to you how much the people of Richmond are in solidarity with your town. So I will read this. I'll read it rather quickly because I know this has been a long program, and if I summarize some of it, it will because it is a rather long proclamation, but it expresses so much. Proclamation expressing solidarity with the city of Lac-Mégantic, Quebec, whereas in the early morning of July 6th, 2013, a train carrying fracked crude pecan oil from North Dakota derailed and exploded in Lac-Mégantic, a small town in Quebec, Canada. And whereas 47 people were killed and the downtown destroyed when this highly flammable and volatile crude exploded, causing a massive fire. And whereas this community has suffered greatly from this tragedy and is still recovering from this deadly crash. Whereas to avoid more such tragedies, Lac-Mégantic citizen groups are calling on authorities to move forward with a promised detour of the track, expressing grave concerns about an effort afoot to resume moving the same crude trains through the same downtown. And whereas their mayor, Colette Roy-Laroux, has sent a strong message expressing the community's wish for a rerouting of the tracks and should be commended for her stance. And whereas in our own city of Richmond, there were 15,000 people who were treated at local hospitals as a result of the 2012 fire and explosion at the Chevron Richmond refinery. And whereas we in Richmond have suffered the impacts of many crude oil disasters, the August 3rd fire being just one of several incidents in recent years, and as a result, the city of Richmond has sued Chevron, seeking to avoid all future incidents. And whereas it is reported that Chevron would like to start moving fracked pecan oil by rail to its Richmond refinery. And whereas the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has recently concluded the following: Oil spill response planning requirements for rail transportation and oil petroleum products are practically non-existent compared with other modes of transportation. And that because conditions have significantly changed with the recent massive growth in crude oil transportation, the regulations are no longer sufficient to mitigate the risks of petroleum product releases and accidents. Current regulations do not require railroads transporting crude oil in multiple tank cars to develop comprehensive spill response plans and have resources on standby. And the NTBS therefore recommends, where technically feasible, require rerouting of trains to avoid transportation of such hazardous materials through populated and other sensitive areas. Whereas these disasters in Lac-Mégantic and in Richmond are not only horrific tragedies, but also corporate crimes. Yes. Yes. And whereas we owe it to all the people who have suffered and died to assign broad culpability by addressing the greed, deregulation, and an extreme energy rush and willingness on the part of the companies to gamble with human life and the environment. And therefore, be it resolved that we, Mayor Gayle McLaughlin and Vice Mayor Jovanka Beckles, on behalf of the City of Richmond, do hereby express our heartfelt sadness and solidarity with the hard-hit community of Lac-Mégantic for their enormous losses of life and property. And be it further resolved that we support the urgent call to respect the people of Lac-Mégantic and not allow crude by rail trains through the middle of their city, for crying out loud. It takes only common sense to know that this must not happen. Be it further resolved that at least and until the governments of the U.S. and Canada fully ensure their ability to fully regulate the movement of crude by rail, such that the health, welfare, and safety of people and the environment are protected, such practices be halted. And be it finally resolved that we demand full accountability from all private oil and train companies who operate in Lac-Mégantic, Richmond, and everywhere, and call for a change in their corporate culture such that they put the health and safety of our communities and our environment ahead of their own profits and expediency. Signed by myself and the Vice. Together. Today is a day of solidarity for us all.
Lac-Mégantic! Solidarity! Lac-Mégantic! Solidarity! Lac-Mégantic! Solidarity! Lac-Mégantic! Solidarity! With love! How are we doing?